Correct. We find ourselves now some of the most auspicious moments of the year. We find ourselves right now in some of the most challenging moments of the year. Flags are up, flags were down, the flags are up. This is the moment of transition, of ma'avar, from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut. Transition, sudden, abrupt. Transition from grief, sorrow, and mourning to joy and celebration. How do we do it? How do we make such a sharp change? But in truth, the transition is not just on these days. The transition from one extreme to the other, between those conflicting emotions, is not just something that characterizes these moments when we go from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut. It is a complexity which is part and parcel of Jewish life, every day of the year. And there are a number of expressions of it if we think throughout our calendar. We think about the different days, the different special occasions which we mark in the year. So we have Yamim Noraim. It's been said that these days are the Yamim Noraim Shel HaMedina. But Yamim Noraim in the classical sense, the days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we live exactly with this tension. We have on the one hand, we know those are days of Imat Adin. They're days of fear, days of trembling. After what we experienced this year, just after Yom Kippur, how much fear and how much trembling will there be the next time we approach Yom Kippur? Days we can't say Hallel because of that Imat Adin. And yet at the same time, on Rosh Hashanah, we are told, writes the Torah, based on the Midrash, Rosh Hashanah is a day on which Ochlim, V'shotim, V'smechim, we eat and drink, we are happy, we know, says the Torah, that a miracle will be performed for us. So we live with this balance, with this contradiction, perhaps, between the two. Another example is Purim. Yom Kippur, Purim itself. Rav Soloveitchik points out something. He says in the Gemara and Megillah, it tells us there are two different psukim, two different verses in Tehillim, two separate chapters from which we learn the obligation that one reads the Megillah, Megillat Esther, both at night and in the day. We have an obligation when it comes to Purim to read the Megillah, read at night and again in the day. So there we have a machloket in the Gemara as to how we know that. Where is that derived from? Two separate psukim. The one opinion says it's from Tehillim Kaf Bet, chapter 22. Ekra yomam velo ta'aneh v'layla velo dumi ali. That is a perek, that is a psalm which expresses despair, expresses desperation. Man is calling out to God at night and at day, and there is no answer. On the other hand, Perek Lamed says the second opinion in the Gemara. We learn it out from Tehillim chapter 30, which says, Leman yazamecha chavod v'lo yidom, all of that I should sing out your glory, your praise, Hashem Elokai, leolam odek. That is a chapter that talks about man's need to sing in praise, in celebration, to give thanks to Hashem. So which one is it? Is it desperation? Is it a call of prayer out of distress? Or is it a song out of celebration? And essentially those two ideas, that is the contradiction inherent in the Megillah itself. That is the contradiction inherent in Purim itself. What is that day? Is it about, on the one hand, there is a calling out, there is a crying out desperately because there is an existential threat against the lives of the Jewish people. And all of a sudden that transforms into celebration and into song. And the Megillah expresses both. It's both sides of the same coin. And Purim expresses both sides of the same coin. And says Rav Soloveitchik, our sages understood that it's too difficult for human beings to be able to celebrate both of those two things, to mark both those things one and at the same time. And therefore the sages split it up. So we have Ta'anit Esther, which is a day of prayer and is a day of crying out. And then you have Purim, which marks the other side. So Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut did not just appear out of nowhere, but it's the same thing. And that is where we are now, that transition, that contradiction, that may be living with both at the same time between Ta'anit Esther and Purim, between Yemat Adin and the Ochlim Shotim V'Smechim, between Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. That is the moment we are right now in our lives. That is the moment where we are in Jewish history. That is the moment where we are in Medinat Yisrael. That is where we all have found ourselves for the last 7 months, and certainly found ourselves tonight and tomorrow. And so I would suggest, and everybody's been asking the question, and we've mentioned it a number of times, how do we celebrate? How do we go into Yom HaAtzmaut this year? So the answer is that if Yom HaAtzmaut is a day that's just about putting up some flags and having some firework displays and even going for a mango and having a party in the park, if that's all it's about, if that's what it is, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But if it's more than that, and if it's so much deeper than that, we're about to have a Tefillah Chagigit, a Tefillah Todayah, a Tefillah, a prayer of thanksgiving. Yom HaAtzmaut is not disconnected from Yom HaZikaron. Every year it comes up, the suggestion is made. How can you go from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut? It's too difficult. It's too hard. It's too hard for the families. It's too hard for the nation. It's too hard for everybody. Separate them. Just add in a day. Just add in a day in between so that there's a gap. There can't be a gap. Because Yom HaAtzmaut comes from Yom HaZikaron. Without Yom HaZikaron, there is no Yom HaAtzmaut. As Rabbi Golden told us beautifully on Friday in the name of Rabbi Rimon, the idea of the Metzorah, the idea of the two birds, the idea of the bird that is dipped into the blood of its fellow, and understands that without the immersion in that blood, that bird cannot go free. So Yom HaAtzmaut derives from, and it comes from, it is a continuation of Yom HaZikaron, and that is why we have the opportunity, the ability, and the duty to celebrate on this day. Yom HaAtzmaut is about giving thanks for miracles. Miracles which until 7 months ago, I think that many of us, perhaps all of us, took for granted. In his commentary to the Haggadah Shel Pesach, Rav Kook says an amazing thing about maror. He says, maror, on Seder night, we sit and we eat that maror, we taste those bitter herbs. We taste the bitterness at the wrong time. We get to the end of the Seder, we get to the end of the Magid, we've become free. We're no longer slaves. And now we taste the maror. Now we taste the bitterness. Explains Rav Kook that being able to taste the bitter is a sign of just how much is sweet. Being able to taste the bitter is a sign that you are no longer a slave, because a slave does not taste bitter. For a slave, everything is bitter. That's all there is. But when you can tell the difference, when you can tell the darkness from the light, when you can distinguish the bitter from the sweet, that is a sign that tells you that so much that we have is not bitter. And Jewish history is full of bitterness. The last 2,000 years, there was so much bitterness in Jewish life, everywhere. And it has still remnants, it has halachic expressions in many, many places. Most of them in halachic expressions in Chutz La'aretz, if you think about it. Birkat Kohanim. Birkat Kohanim, which are in, according to the Ashkenazi custom, here in Eretz Yisrael, we have the privilege, assuming we have Kohanim, we have the privilege to do every single day. In Chutz La'aretz, only on Yom Tov, only at Musaf. That is the only time that Jews could achieve the requisite level of simcha that is needed in order to be able to merit the Birkat Kohanim. Because every other day was full of bitterness. At a Brit Milah, in Chutz La'aretz, at a Brit Milah, the father does not say Shechianu, in according to the Ashkenazi custom. Here, we say it. Say Shechianu v'kimanu v'gianu azman hazeh. Because we have overcome so much of that bitterness, and that bitterness that we have all been plunged into in the last 7 months, ironically and paradoxically, can help us to understand to appreciate how much we have, what we will give thanks for in just a few moments. It's not just another tefillah, it's not just another parak of Tehillim. Thanks for miracles. I heard a statistic. I heard that in 1948, at the establishment of the state, and we were fighting a war for our independence, fighting a war for our existence as we are today. I heard a statistic that said 25% of the population here, the Jewish population in this country, was survivors of the Holocaust. The Air Force. What Air Force did we have to fight with in 1948 in the War of Independence? We had 4 second-hand planes from Czechoslovakia. That was the Air Force. Look at what we have today. Look at everything that's going on. Will they send us weapons? Will they not send us weapons? Will they send us planes? Whatever it is, with all of that, after October 7th, after America, all of that, we're still a military superpower, a technological superpower. In 1948, 76 years ago, 4 planes. How did it happen? How did we get you? There's only one explanation. There's only one explanation. How did any of this happen if not by me? One of the, as we spoke about on Shabbat, maybe the greatest miracle that we have, and the greatest miracle that we're giving thanks for tonight is the Ruach Gvura, the spirit of bravery, the spirit of courage that has been divinely implanted within our people and within this generation. It's been said, my Golden said it on Friday as well, so many thought this generation was the TikTok generation, whatever you want to call it. They thought we couldn't do it. They thought we couldn't emulate what our ancestors did in 1948. I want to read you a letter. It wasn't a letter, it was a speech. It was said by Sgan Aluf Tomer Greenberg. Tomer Greenberg was the Magad, the Mefaked Gedud, the commander of battalion number 13 of the Golani Brigade. And these are words that he told his soldiers before they went into battle in Gaza. Little did he know that he would be talking about himself. And he said the following. He said, you have to know that you are a prophecy which is fulfilling itself. The generation of Yom Kippur is here again. In 10 years' time, there will be another Magad, there will be another commander of Battalion 13, and he will be talking to his brave fighters before they go into battle. Some of you, talking to his soldiers, will be parents. Some of you don't know where you'll be. But that commander will stand and he will tell his battalion. He'll show them the pictures of the fallen from this battle. And he'll tell them the stories of your bravery. So maybe you aren't what everybody thought. Maybe you aren't the iPhone generation. Maybe you are more than that. And as I say, he didn't know. But he was talking about himself. Because tragically, he was killed later on. He was killed in the battles in northern Gaza. Yom HaAtzmaut, this day, we celebrate that bravery. We celebrate the Kiddush Hashem that took place on this day, that continues to take place on this day. The Kiddush Hashem of the state of Israel, Medinat Israel, is the greatest Kiddush Hashem that exists in the world. It is the greatest sanctification of God's name. Because it means that Jewish blood is no longer cheap, that Jewish blood is no longer hefker. It occurred to me this morning, standing at the military cemetery, that on Yom HaZikaron, Erev Yom HaAtzmaut, thousands of Jews get together, stand together in cemeteries across the country, religious, secular, from all across the spectrum. And all together in unison say, Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. Sanctifying God's name. No longer, no matter what the rest of the world thinks, no matter what the rest of the world can say, they may abandon us. But no longer can anyone say that God has abandoned his people. With the bravery of our soldiers and with the grace of God together, we have returned. We'll hold our heads up high. We have sanctified and we will continue to sanctify God's name in death, but more importantly, through life. Today, tonight, is the day that we declare Am Yisrael Chai. Today is the day that we declare Me'et Hashem Ha'itazot Niflat Be'eineinu. This comes from God. This is a miracle. It is wondrous in our eyes. We will continue We will continue to live the miracle. We will continue to live this dream. We will prevail. And we will declare together in unison, Zeh hayom asah Hashem. This is the day which God has made. Nagila v'nismechavu. Let us give thanks. Let us celebrate in joy. And let us give thanks to Him on this day. Good.
In the Rinat Erev of everybody, in the Rinat Yisrael Sidurim. So the Tefillah starts on page 437.
In the new version of page 553.
Oh, you are the Gita,
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וצווינו על שכירת העומר.
Amen.
יום 11 יום, כן 3 שבועות, העומר.
אתה אדוני אלוהינו שלנו אשר קידשנו במצוותיו העומר. היום 20 יום שהם 3 שבועות לעומר. מה יחזיר לנו כאן בהישמע תורה בין אמן סלע.
יום לעומר. עלינו לשבח.
Min enu nashaleyema Mashiach ani amin Papi ve'imamei haki Chag Sameach.